Title: Shanghai alerts. The megacity's premier tech giant abandoned the mega tower it named after itself. Intro music. Thudding chugging electronic beat. Urgent cable news energy narrator. On the morning of January 8, 2018, Chairman Wang stood at the absolute base of the most imposing architectural marvel in Shanghai's soaring tech corridor. He looked out at the sprawling metropolis and declared a new era visual. Fast kinetic zoom from cloud level down to the base, revealing a glass and steel monolith behind him, towered a jaw-dropping 326 meters, 1,070 feet of shimmering, ultra-reflective glass and reinforced structural steel, 61 floors of absolute premium commercial real estate. It was officially the tallest dedicated tech headquarters in the entire Yangtze River Delta, and its crown had just been emblazoned with the glowing emblem of his massive cloud computing empire. The Emptied Mega Tower. Wang's speech was designed to shake the industry. Standing before a crowd of local officials and engineers, he spoke of civic harmony. He spoke about narrowing the economic gap, about the staggering contrast between tech multi-billionaires and the migrating workers looking up from the busy avenues below. He stared up at the sheer, tapered facade and announced to every onlooker that this structure was not an isolated citadel. It was a civic beacon, a monument proving that massive corporate growth and local social prosperity could coexist in the heart of urban China. Wang, archival audio effect. I hope our citizens look at this spire not just as a corporate headquarters, but as an undeniable symbol of collective progress. Sound effect, dramatic bass, drop narrator. Fast forward just 5 short years, the narrative didn't just change, it completely imploded. By early 2023, Emptied was desperately dumping, shedding, and subleasing more premium office space across Shanghai than the entire 1.4 million square foot mega tower contained. If you are new to this channel, we break down the hard numbers, the structural shifts, and the high-stakes engineering realities behind the world's most expensive mega projects. The glass symbols that booming metropolises build to announce their arrival to the global stage, and the chaotic aftermath when the economic and physical foundations shift underneath them. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss our next deep dive. To fully comprehend the jaw-dropping scale of the vacancy crisis currently gripping this specific financial hub, you must understand what Emptied originally represented to the Shanghai municipal core. It wasn't just a tenant. It was the absolute anchor of the city's modern identity. Founded by Chairman Wang in a cramped residential apartment in 1999, the tech giant stubbornly refused to leave the high-density urban center. While every other competitive digital conglomerate of comparable scale relocated to sprawling, insulated tech campuses in the distant outer suburbs or tech zones of Shenzhen and Hangzhou, Emptied stayed directly in the high-density financial district. They demanded urban density, immediate subway connectivity, and the vibrant, mixed-use street life that traditional suburban tech parks purposely locked out. By 2018, Emptied had exploded into the city's largest private employer, anchoring a workforce of tens of thousands in the municipal core alone. The Emptied Megatower was designed to be the physical proof of a bold architectural argument that cutting-edge technology belongs in the dense heart of the megacity. Visual, graphic fly through of the 7.5 billion yuan construction. Schematics, the total investment to realize the single tower? A staggering 7.5 billion yuan, 1.1 billion USD. Construction crews broke ground in 2013 on a premium, high-stakes plot previously occupied by a decrepit, low-rise municipal bus depot. That old structure was completely leveled to make way for a futuristic, multi-line underground transit hub and the ultra-dense commercial district surrounding it. The city commissioned a world-renowned architectural firm famous for iconic supertalls across Asia to draft the design. They delivered a striking, tapered, cylindrical form that elegantly narrowed as it pierced the Shanghai skyline. At its absolute summit sat a massive crown of integrated, high-intensity LED panels programmed to cycle through dazzling light shows visible from miles across the Huangpi River. Even more ambitious, the tower featured a direct structural connection to a massive 5.4-acre public sky garden constructed right on the roof of the adjacent multi-level transit terminal. The building was engineered to be integrated directly into the city's public transport network. Rather than floating isolationist above it, Yuncloud went all in, signing an unprecedented pre-construction lease for over 700,000 square feet inside the 1.4 million square foot structure. That meant more than half of a multi-billion yuan tower was locked down before the engineering teams had even poured the first underground structural retaining wall to match their blistering growth projections. They simultaneously leased an entire secondary 30-story skyscraper just 1 block away, a project known as Yuncloud East. Together, these two structures gave the tech titan a real estate footprint that seemed untouchable, with premium commercial office space trading at astronomical record highs in the local market, and downtown office vacancy hovering at an all-time rock-bottom low of just 4.7% in early 2019. The developer's financial projections appeared completely ironclad. The tower was deemed a bulletproof asset, and then the global landscape shifted overnight. The empty towers were about to face their ultimate structural and economic stress test. Sound effect, ticking clock accelerating into a loud metallic alarm chime narrator. The turning point arrived with absolute, uncompromising speed. In the first quarter of 2020, strict municipal public health mandates swept across Shanghai's financial districts. Overnight, the bustling commercial avenues fell completely silent. The high-density elevator banks stopped cycling. The Yuncloud megatower, along with every single super-tall commercial structure in the district, was completely emptied of its human workforce. But while most corporate boards viewed this as a temporary operational pause, Yuncloud's internal data team began tracking a different set of metrics. They looked at remote server loads, communication pings, and output efficiency. The hard data revealed an undeniable truth. Productivity did not drop. The massive workforce did not miss the grueling daily commute on the underground metro lines. By October of 2020, during an urgent quarterly executive broadcast, Chairman Wang dropped a financial bombshell that sent shockwaves through the entire domestic commercial real estate sector. Wang, Shival audio effect, the old paradigm of central urban concentration is completely dead. We are never going back to the way things were. The data does not support it. Visual. Animated, map charting the rapid unwinding of square footage. What followed was a ruthless, systematic unwinding of premium corporate real estate assets that lasted for 36 months. The data tells the story of an absolute corporate retreat from the city center. March 2021, Yuncloud officially placed 339,000 square feet of its secondary skyscraper, Yuncloud East, onto the domestic sublease market, offloading massive blocks of floors to consumer brands and national retail headquarters. The same week, the company abruptly terminated a pre-construction agreement for an additional 325,000 square foot tower in a nearby development zone that hadn't even finished its foundation pilings. February 2023, in a desperate consolidation move, a major corporate messaging subsidiary that Yuncloud had acquired for a staggering 180 billion yuan, 28 billion USD, completely abandoned its own independent downtown headquarters, cramming its remaining personnel into the main Yuncloud megatower to cut overhead. January 2023, a sweeping corporate restructuring resulted in a 10% reduction in its workforce, eliminating nearly 1,000 high-paying tech roles in Shanghai alone. In public financial disclosures submitted to the municipal regulatory bodies, Yuncloud revealed it was bracing for a massive financial hit, projecting between 3 billion and 4.3 billion yuan, $450 million to $650 million USD, in pure penalty fees and write-offs solely related to breaking its long-term urban real estate leases. Visual. Motioned graphics, showing a rendered tower dissolving, floor by floor. By April of 2023, the final corporate anchor slipped. Yuncloud listed the last remaining floors it controlled inside Yuncloud East for immediate sublease. The 30-story skyscraper they had proudly claimed in its entirety a decade prior was now completely vacant of Yuncloud personnel. An entire tower, dark. According to consolidated data compiled at the start of 2024, Yuncloud had officially earned a dark distinction. It held more vacant sublease space than any single enterprise in the entire history of the city. At its peak, over 700,000 square feet of premium space inside the flagship Emptied Mega Tower was active on the market simultaneously. Think about that metric. The very corporation that paid for the naming rights, the company whose glowing LED crown dominated the Shanghai skyline, was actively trying to shed an amount of space equivalent to more than half of the tower's entire rentable interior volume. When you aggregate the lost square footage across their primary and secondary offices, Emptied had single-handedly surrendered over 1 million square feet of prime commercial real estate back to the market. That is the physical equivalent of a massive, freestanding, super-tall skyscraper completely wiped off the municipal occupancy books. Sound fact. Deep resonant drums strike. But the real crisis isn't just limited to one tech giant. Emptied was simply the canary in the coal mine for an unprecedented structural shift across the entire regional economy. Let's look at the broader market data because the numbers are absolutely staggering. In the second quarter of 2019, the downtown financial district boasted a commercial office vacancy rate of just 4.7%. It was one of the tightest, most lucrative property markets on Earth. By mid-2024, that vacancy rate had ballooned to a mind-boggling 37% visual, on-screen text flash, 37% vacancy. Historic high. This represents the highest commercial vacancy ever recorded in the history of the municipality, completely eclipsing every other primary economic hub in China. In the ultra-modern south of River submarket, where the Emptied Mega Tower stands as the primary architectural anchor, the localized vacancy rate peaked at a catastrophic 45%. Walk down these avenues today, and you are looking at entire blocks of ultra-luxury, glass curtain wall office buildings, monuments constructed during the tech investment boom of the 2010s, where nearly half of the floors sit in total darkness. To put that into an engineering and spatial perspective, the total volume of empty office space currently sitting vacant across the downtown core is the exact structural equivalent of 21 separate Emptied mega towers standing completely empty from basement to crown. Every square foot of 21 massive skyscrapers, totally abandoned. The financial fallout hit the local banking and municipal sectors like an earthquake. Commercial asset valuations that had easily commanded over 7,000 yuan per square foot, 1,000 USD, during the height of the market in 2022 plummeted to just 22,000 yuan per square foot, 300 USD, by mid-2224 as a direct result. Municipal revenue projections tied to commercial property transactions and corporate occupancy taxes were aggressively slashed by more than 7 billion yuan. The local district budget forecasts structural deficits exceeding 10 billion yuan heading toward 2027. The economic bedrock of the tech boom had cracked wide open. Sound effect, low-freak industrial rumble. Intense, accelerating drone narrator. To fully grasp the magnitude of what is unfolding beneath the glass curtain walls of Shanghai, you have to look beyond a single company's ledger. This is not an isolated real estate correction. This is a structural phenomenon echoing across the entire landscape of modern Chinese mega engineering. When you build higher, faster, and denser than any civilization in human history, the structural vulnerability, both financial and physical, multiply exponentially. Visual map of China highlighting tech and financial corridors. Shanghai, Shenzhen, Tianjin, Chongqing. Look across the major economic zones of the country, and you will see the exact same script playing out, proving that the Emptied Mega Tower is part of a systemic pattern. Let's fly north to the Binhai New area in Tianjin. Here sits the iconic Golden Finance 1 in 17 Tower, an unimaginably massive 597-meter super tall, designed to be the crown jewel of a high-end financial district, poured with millions of tons of high-grade concrete, engineered to withstand structural deflection, and wrapped in premium glass. It was meant to announce the region's absolute economic dominance. Today, it stands as the tallest unfinished building in the world, a silent 128-story monolith piercing the northern sky without a single tenant, a physical monument to aggressive growth projections that collided headfirst with a shifting economic reality. The engineering was sound, the market foundation was not. Visual. Speed ramped clip of the Shenzhen Skyline with data overlays showing vacancy numbers. Now look south to the tech hub of Shenzhen, the silicon heart of the nation. In the Fujian and Nanshan districts, massive megablocks were erected in record time during the 2010s to house the explosive growth of domestic hardware and software conglomerates. Towering structures like the Ping and Finance Center and surrounding luxury office blocks altered the Skyline almost overnight. But by 2024, as remote work protocols matured and tech firms aggressively trimmed their corporate footprints, Shenzhen's commercial office vacancy rate similarly spiked into the double digits, hovering near 25% to 30% in critical submarkets. Just like YunCloud in Shanghai, massive tech entities in Shenzhen began quietly offloading subleased floors, subletting entire structural blocks to avoid the crushing overhead of underutilized skyscrapers. Sound effect, metallic twang, screen flashes with engineering data. Why does this happen with such devastating predictability in mega high-rise construction? It comes down to the foundational engineering of how these massive commercial development zones are planned. In traditional engineering, a skyscraper is built to fulfill a pre-existing, dense localized demand. But in the hyper-accelerated build cycles of the past 2 decades, towers became speculative economic engines. They were designed as physical anchors to pull demand toward a newly designated district. Consider the engineering realities of a building like the YunCloud Mega Tower. Total concrete volume: over 200,000 cubic meters of specialized high-strength concrete poured into a massive foundation mat. Structural load: hundreds of thousands of metric tons pressing down onto the soft alluvial soil of the Yangtze River Delta. Engineering adjustments: massive deep pile foundations driven up to 80 meters into the earth to prevent settlement and leaning. A technical marvel overseen by the local municipal construction commissions and top-tier domestic design institutes. The physical engineering team successfully conquered the soft ground. They ensured the building wouldn't lean like older high-rises or suffer the structural failures seen in poorly anchored projects. But what the structural engineers couldn't calculate was the behavioral shift of the human capital inside it. When an entire commercial district is engineered around the assumption of 100% density, with metro stations, underground retail plazas, and high-speed elevator banks all synchronized to handle tens of thousands of workers per hour, a sudden drop to 50% or 60% occupancy destabilizes the entire ecosystem. Visual: diagram showing urban NCVS. Subli vacancy chans the skyscraper vacancy multiplier. When a primary anchor tenant like YunCloud dumps 1 million square feet of space, it creates a cascading failure through the surrounding architecture. The underground restaurants lose their foot traffic. The municipal metro extensions see lower ridership. The secondary office buildings are forced to slash their rents to competing levels, triggering a race to the bottom that destroys the asset value of the entire district. In Chongqing and Wuhan, similar luxury waterfront high-rises have faced this exact same structural crunch. Towers engineered with state-of-the-art glass curtain walls and advanced wind-damping systems sit with vast zones of dark floors. Municipalities that once raced to rewrite their skylines with increasingly taller, more extravagant designs are now issuing strict occupancy and height restrictions. The era of building supertalls purely as corporate status symbols has hit an unyielding economic wall. Chairman Wang, watching these national metrics from his executive suite inside the YunCloud Mega Tower, realized that his glowing beacon was no longer a symbol of an insulated tech boom. It was a mirror reflecting a sweeping nationwide realignment of urban commercial real estate. The structural integrity of the tower remained perfectly intact, but the narrative that built it had completely dissolved. Sound effect: drifting melodic synth, accentuated by the distant sound of metro trains' rumbling underground narrator. Behind every multi-billion yuan real estate collapse, behind every staggering percentage point reported by municipal housing bureaus, there is a human cost. Skyscrapers are not just abstract configurations of glass, steel, and structural concrete. They are vertical communities. And when a 1 million square foot corporate footprint suddenly evaporates from a downtown district, it triggers an immediate, chaotic chain reaction that shatters the livelihoods of the ordinary citizens who keep the entire ecosystem functioning. Visual, credit tracking shot down a gleaming, Securit corridor with raw data overlays. To understand the raw, unvarnished reality of this vacancy crisis, you have to look at the stories of people like Li Na. For nearly 6 years, Li operated a high-end, independent espresso bar located directly in the subterranean retail plaza beneath Emptied East, the 30-story secondary tower that Emptied had leased in its entirety. When she signed her long-term commercial lease in late 2017, the economic foundation felt completely unshakable. Every single morning, between 7:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., a relentless wave of thousands of young tech professionals, engineers, and data analysts would pour out of the integrated metro station exit. Surging directly past her storefront, her espresso machines operated at maximum structural capacity, cycling through hundreds of cups an hour. She employed 4 full-time staff members. She invested her entire family savings, nearly 800,000 yuan, into high-end imported equipment and premium interior design to match the sleek, ultramodern aesthetic of the corporate tower above her. Li Na. Dramatic voice recovery actor multiplex. We weren't just running a business. We were riding a rocket ship. The building was alive. You could feel the kinetic energy of the tech boom in the soles of your shoes every time the shift changed. We thought Emptied would be here forever. Sound effect. Lightning-fast whoosh transitioning to silence narrator. Then came the quiet. When Emptied systematically emptied Emptied East, transferring their remaining core staff into the primary Emptied mega tower and subleasing the vacant space to retail brands that never fully moved in. Li Na's customer base didn't just decline. It vanished. The thousands of daily corporate commuters were replaced by a scattering of maintenance personnel and occasional couriers. By the first quarter of 2024, her daily sales volumes had plummeted by a catastrophic 85%. She was forced to lay off her entire staff, operating the espresso machines completely alone in a hauntingly quiet, cavernous marble corridor by mid-2024, with property management refusing to adjust her high base rent because the building's underlying asset value was already cratering. Li Na had no choice. She locked the glass doors, walked away from her investment, and joined the growing statistics of small businesses crushed by the corporate tech exodus. Visual. Graphic split screen, showing downtown property depreciation values, and the financial damage figures stretching across the south of River District are absolutely staggering. Let's look at the hard forensic data. Metric peak market 2022, market bottom 2024. Net structural shift commercial rent per SQ. Meter 3/5 month 110, month 68.5%. Collapse average asset valuation per SQ. Foot, yo 70,000 1,000 USD. 309 yo 48,000. Capital Loss District office occupancy rate 95.3%, 55.0%, 4.3%. Evacuation rate. Think about the sheer velocity of that capital destruction. A premium commercial office tower that was valued at a massive 5 billion yuan on paper in early 2022 was suddenly struggling to attract buyers at 1.5 billion yuan just 24 months later. National financial institutions and local municipal development funds that had issued massive construction loans based on the projected 70,000 yuan per square foot valuations found themselves holding toxic, severely under-collateralized real estate assets. Sound effect, industrial siren, urgent metallic clanging narrator, but the economic fallout quickly evolved into a high-stakes public relations disaster for Chairman Wang himself. As the vacancy numbers climbed and entire blocks of the financial district sat half-empty, the social tension within the city began to boil over. Watching the unfolding economic stagnation from his expansive executive suite on the 58th floor of the Emptied mega tower, Wang grew increasingly erratic and vocal about the deteriorating state of the surrounding urban environment. The tech visionary, who in 2018 had stood at the base of the tower and called it a beacon of hope for migrating workers and struggling families, completely flipped the script. Visual. Archival news, headlines flashing on screen with dramatic lighting effect. Every year for 2 decades, Emptied had hosted the legendary Cloud Summit conference in the heart of Shanghai. It was the premier annual digital technology exposition in the nation, drawing an estimated 40,000 domestic and international visitors, tech executives, and venture capitalists to the city every single autumn. The event single-handedly generated tens of millions of yuan in localized hospitality, hotel, and transport revenue for the municipality. But in August of 2023, ahead of the scheduled conference, Chairman Wang blindsided city officials during an unscripted interview with a prominent business publication. He bluntly declared that if the local municipal authorities did not aggressively clean up the surrounding district, citing rising instances of visible urban vagrancy, street-level disruptions, and the noticeable stagnation of public infrastructure around the commercial mega blocks, this would be the absolute last time the Cloud Summit would ever be held in the city. Wang, archival audio effect. The current state of our premier commercial corridors is a complete, unmitigated train wreck. If our corporate guests and international partners do not feel that this environment reflects a world-class, orderly financial hub, we will immediately pull our signature event and relocate our digital ecosystem to an alternative regional hub. Sound effect, deep, ominous gong resonating narrator. The public backlash was instantaneous. The man who had positioned his multi-billion yuan tower as an inclusive civic monument was now openly using his corporate economic leverage to threaten the municipality. He was treating the very city that had birthed his empire as a failing asset that could be discarded or relocated at a moment's notice. Behind closed doors, the local housing bureau, the Municipal Construction Commission, and senior district officials scrambled to manage the fallout. The tension was palpable. Wang attempted to soften the severe blow by publicly announcing a high-profile 7 million yuan corporate donation to municipal social welfare and emergency relief programs. And the 2023 Cloud Summit Conference did ultimately proceed under intense security and heavy municipal coordination. But the psychological damage to the city's identity was already done. The grand corporate illusion had completely shattered. The Uncloud Megatower still pierces the skyline at 415 South River Avenue, its massive high-intensity LED crown still cycling through dazzling clusters every single evening, cutting through the dense coastal mist. But for the citizens walking the avenues below, for the small business owners cleaning up empty food courts, and for the thousands of laid-off tech workers browsing employment boards, the glowing tower no longer looks like a beacon of collective progress. It looks like a towering glass and steel monument to corporate isolationism, a structural shell waiting for an economic tide that may never return. Sound effect, low, racing electronic pulse that gradually builds into a steady industrial rhythm narrator. The structural crisis locking down Shanghai's premier commercial district is not an ending. It is a terrifying window into the future of urban engineering across the globe. As we head deeper into the late 2020s, the unyielding metrics of the Uncloud Megatower are forcing structural engineers, urban planners, and real estate developers to confront a massive systemic risk that cannot be patched over with clever corporate rebranding or temporary municipal subsidies. Visual, panoramic shot of the ultra-modern, district Skyline at dusk, showing lights dropping out, floor by floor. The core vulnerability is what engineering analysts call structural asset obsolescence. For half a century, the entire discipline of high-rise engineering was predicated on a singular foundational equation. As a city's economy expands, its human density must concentrate vertically. Towers like the 326-meter Uncloud monolith were meticulously engineered under the assumption that a centralized high-density workforce was the only way to drive modern digital commerce. Elevators were synchronized by advanced artificial intelligence to move 20,000 pods an hour. HVAC systems were scaled to scrub air for massive floor plates of packed tech workers. And municipal transit networks were tunneled directly into subterranean lobbies to handle crushing peak-hour surges. But when remote infrastructure, distributed cloud servers, and decentralized operational protocols permanently alter human behavior, the physical skyscraper becomes a highly inefficient engineering artifact. A 61-story tower cannot simply shut down its lower half to save on utility overhead. The massive structural loads still require continuous high-volume water pump cycles. The massive glass curtain wall, engineered to flex under high wind pressures across the Huangpu River, still requires constant, multi-million yuan structural inspections and specialized maintenance crews to prevent seal degradation and structural glazing failures. The asset holder, Boston Properties' domestic joint venture partner, still has to pay the staggering operational costs of keeping a super tall structurally stable, whether it is 100% full or 37% empty visual. Three-dimensional diagram showing subless spread and sinking asset value ripples. The spreading risk is now cascading into what economists call a real estate contagion chain. Look at the timeline stretching out toward 2031, the exact year YunCloud's primary anchor lease finally expires. Between now and then, the tech giant is legally locked into paying premium rental rates for space they do not want, do not use, and cannot efficiently fill. To mitigate this massive cash drain, YunCloud will keep undercutting the rest of the market, dumping heavily discounted sublease space onto the books. This completely freezes any new high-rise construction across the municipal core. Why would a developer pour billions of yuan into a new foundation mat when they have to compete with an entire skyscraper's worth of premium, pre-built tech space, selling at a 68% discount just one metro stop away? Sound effect. Heavy metallic thud the future scenario. Across major hubs like Guangzhou, Chengdu, and Hangzhou, municipal planning commissions are aggressively pivoting away from the super tall race. The era of building massive, single-use corporate monuments to saw a district's economic arrival off is officially over. Instead, the industry is forcing a radical high-stakes shift toward adaptive structural mixed-use engineering. Architectural teams are now being brought in to study whether these empty, deep floor plate commercial tech towers can be physically retrofitted into high-density vertical farms, automated data storage centers, or luxury residential units. But the engineering hurdles are immense. Commercial towers are built around central core plumbing and massive, open-plan structural zones. Converting them into individualized residential layouts requires tearing apart the very structural fabric of the building's interior engineering, costing billions of yuan in additional capital. Visual, wide Kintic overshot, returning to the YunCloud Megatower, crowned cycling through lights tonight. The YunCloud Megatower stands exactly where it was engineered to stand. Its foundations anchored deep within the alluvial soil, perfectly level, completely structurally sound. The brilliant LED crown still cycles through its stunning colors, casting its glow across the dark waters of the bay. The public sky garden next door remains meticulously manicured, a quiet park floating 5 stories above the empty transit lanes. The physical structure hasn't changed a single millimeter since January 8, 2018, when Chairman Wang stood at its base, looked up at the glass spire, and declared it a symbol of hope for the entire city. The building didn't fail. The engineering didn't collapse. What failed was the economic illusion that built it. The tower remains a beacon on the Shanghai skyline. But today, it stands as a silent, glowing warning of what happens when a city builds its future on a corporate narrative that can vanish into the cloud overnight. Fade to black with channel logo and subscribe card. Music, dramatic, resolving electronic chord.